After a full day teaching classes at the public school, I arrived home exhausted. I saw a new lock on the pantry door. "It's so you don't touch our things," my daughter-in-law said without looking at me. I smiled without saying a word. The next day, the padlock was gone, and in its place, I left a letter, one that made her hands shake when she read it. Yes, that's exactly what happened, just as you are hearing it. A padlock, in my own house. On the pantry that I had built myself 25 years ago, when my Robert was still breathing and this house smelled of fresh brewed coffee and blueberry muffins in the mornings. But let me tell you from the beginning, because this story doesn't start with a padlock. It starts much earlier, when I still believed that being a good mother meant giving everything without expecting anything in return. My name is Eleanor. I am 67 years old, and for 42 of those years, I was an elementary school teacher at the Franklin D. Roosevelt School in a district of Chicago. I taught over 800 children to read. I gave them affection when their own homes did not. And I never, ever imagined that my own son would make me feel like an intruder in the place where I raised 3 children and buried a husband. That Tuesday, I arrived tired. My legs ached after standing all afternoon supervising recess. I was 65 then, just about to retire. I came in through the back door, as always, and went straight to the pantry to look for the peanut butter crackers I saved for my afternoon snack. My one little treat after a long day. And there it was. A new, shiny, silver padlock hanging from the door of my pantry, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I froze. My purse slipped from my shoulder. For a second I thought I was in the wrong house, that I had mistaken the door. But no. There was the cracked tile next to the stove that Robert never got around to changing. There were the pots of basil on the window. It was my kitchen, my house. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, you're here." Victoria entered the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel. She was wearing that pink blouse that, according to her, cost $250 at a boutique in Beverly Hills. The same money I spent on groceries for the entire week. "What is this?" I asked, pointing to the lock. My voice came out softer than I would have liked. I still didn't quite understand what I was seeing. She didn't even look up. "Oh, that. Well, Matthew and I bought some things for ourselves. You know, imported products, organic olive oil, that sort of thing. And well, we don't want them to get mixed up with everything else. It's to avoid problems." To avoid problems, as if I were the problem. "But Victoria, this is my pantry, my house." She finally looked at me, and in those brown eyes that once seemed sweet, I only saw coldness. "Oh, Eleanor, don't take it personally. It's just organization. You have your space, we have ours. It's the healthiest thing in a shared living situation, don't you think?" My space. In my own house. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to rip that padlock off and throw it out the window, as if I were a tolerated tenant. But something inside me, that part that was always the teacher, the one who learned to measure every word before saying it, made me keep quiet. I smiled. "Of course, dear, whatever you say." And I went to my room. I didn't cry that night. I was too furious to cry. I sat on the bed I shared with Robert for 38 years, and for the first time in 3 years, I allowed myself to clearly see what I had been ignoring. My house was no longer mine. It hadn't happened all at once. It was like when mold gets into the walls. You don't see it until it's everywhere. If this story is stirring something inside you, subscribe to the channel, because what comes next, even I didn't see coming. 3 years ago, when Robert died of a heart attack while watering his geraniums, my world fell apart. I didn't just lose my husband. I lost the sound of his footsteps in the morning, the smell of his cologne when he got ready to go out, That way he hugged me from behind while I cooked. The house became a giant echo. Matthew, my youngest son, came to the funeral with Victoria. They had been married for 2 years. He hugged me and said, "Mum, we're not going to leave you alone. We'll move in with you until you're better." "Temporary," he said, "just until I recovered." But temporary turned into a month, then 6, then a year. And suddenly 3 years had passed, and they hadn't just not left. They had taken complete possession. At first it was subtle. Victoria started helping by reorganizing the kitchen. "It's just more practical this way, Mum." The antique serving dishes I inherited from my mother were piled up on the top cabinet where I couldn't reach anymore. My old but good frying pans were replaced by non-stick pots that, according to her, were healthier. Then came the furniture. "That couch is too old, Eleanor. We're going to donate it." And my brown armchair, where Robert read the newspaper every Sunday, disappeared. In its place, they put a modern grey sofa that was nice, yes, but it wasn't mine. The living room became her office. My sewing room was filled with boxes of her things. The dining room where we celebrated every birthday, every Christmas, was now decorated with abstract paintings that I hadn't chosen. And I, like a fool, let it happen. Because I thought it was love, that they were helping me modernize, that this was life with young people. But the padlock was different. The padlock was a message. That night, lying in the dark, I remembered something I told a student years ago. Her name was Lucy, and her older sister treated her badly, took her things, made her feel invisible in her own family. "Lucy," I told her, "never let anyone make you feel less in your own life, not even for love." And I had done exactly that. I looked at the ceiling. The shadows from the street lamp moved like ghosts. And then, for the first time in a long time, I felt something stronger than sadness. I felt anger. And that anger, I would soon discover, was exactly what I needed to wake up. Because what Victoria didn't know is that teachers learn to read between the lines. And I had just perfectly read her message. What she also didn't know was that I also knew how to write. Stay tuned to see what I did with that padlock and what I discovered later on her laptop. The next day, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't had in years, like when you take off dirty glasses and suddenly see all the details you had been ignoring. I got up early, as always. I made my coffee in the old coffee maker they still allowed me to use, because the Italian capsule machine was only for them. I sat in the small space left for me at the breakfast table and began to remember. It wasn't sudden. It was like water eroding stone, drop by drop, until you no longer recognize your own house. I let my mind travel 3 years back, to the day of Robert's funeral. It was unbearably hot for November. St. Patrick's Church was full. Fellow teachers, neighbours, his domino friends, the ladies from the corner store where he bought his cigarettes. Secretly, because I scolded him. Matthew arrived with Victoria. She wore a simple black dress and her hair pulled back. She hugged me gently and said, "Count on me for whatever you need, Mum." Her voice sounded sincere. Or maybe I needed to believe it was. After the burial, when everyone left and the house was left in that dreadful silence that only the recently widowed know, Matthew took my hands. "Mum, you can't stay alone, not now." "I'll be fine, son. Your father taught me to be strong." "I know, but we're going to stay with you for a while anyway, just until you recover. The house is huge, we have plenty of room." Victoria nodded beside him, with that smile that then seemed kind. "It's temporary, Eleanor. A few months at most. Plus, that way we save for the down payment on our own house, and you're not alone. It's perfect for everyone." Perfect for everyone. What a well-wrapped lie. The first few days were good. Victoria cooked, cleaned, accompanied me to teacher meetings when I didn't feel like going alone. Matthew fixed things around the house that had been broken for years: the water heater, the lock on the garden door, the leaks in the bathroom. I felt accompanied, less empty. But in the third week, Victoria started with her suggestions. "Oh, Mum, these curtains are so old. What if we buy new ones? I have a really good eye for decoration." They were the curtains Robert and I chose when we remodeled the living room, a terracotta colour that matched the tile floors. But I was so emotionally tired that I just said, "Okay, dear, whatever you think." A week later, my terracotta curtains were in the trash. In their place were minimalist white ones that let in too much light and made the living room feel cold. Then came the dining room. "These landscape paintings are totally outdated. Look, I bought these at a gallery. Modern art. They give it personality." The landscapes were of the California wine country, where Robert and I spent our honeymoon. Every time I looked at them, I remembered us in that small inn, laughing because we had gotten lost looking for a diner. But when I protested timidly, Victoria had already packed them. "Don't worry, I saved them in a box. Maybe you'll want to look at them someday." Someday. As if my own history was optional in my own house. The changes kept coming like waves, each one small, each one with good intentions. My collection of antique serving dishes. They take up too much space. Let's put them upstairs. My potted plants in the garden. They're too messy. I'm going to reorganize them. The bookcase in the living room with Robert's novels. These books are ancient. Should we donate them? And I, still stunned by grief, nodded. Because I thought I was being difficult, old-fashioned, clinging to the past. But the real change came when they started modifying the routines. Before, Sundays were sacred in this house. My two daughters, Chloe and Brittany, would come with my grandchildren. We would prepare turkey, mashed potatoes, whatever we craved. The house would fill with laughter, children running, that beautiful mess that is a family gathered. 3 weeks after moving in with us, Victoria suggested, "What if we just do family dinners every other week? It's just that Matthew and I need to rest on Sundays." Then it was, "What if we make it once a month?" And then we just stopped having them. One Sunday, Chloe arrived without warning with a cake and flowers. Victoria opened the door in pajamas, looking displeased. "Oh, Chloe, we didn't know you were coming. Nothing is prepared. Matthew and I were about to go out." My eldest daughter looked at me. I was in the kitchen, embarrassed, not knowing what to say. "I thought we still did family dinners," Chloe said, her voice tight. "Yes, but now we all live together. We need to coordinate better, don't you think?" Coordinate. As if seeing my own daughter required permission. Chloe left the cake on the table, gave me a cold kiss on the cheek, and left. She didn't return for 2 months. My friends suffered the same fate. My friend Rose, with whom I had coffee every Thursday for 20 years, stopped coming. The last time she arrived, Victoria was doing yoga in the living room with electronic music blasting. "Oh, excuse me, Rose, I didn't know you were coming. It's just that this is my workout time." Rose, uncomfortable among the mats and the incense Victoria had lit, drank her coffee quickly and left. "You should let me know when your friends are coming over," Victoria told me later without looking up from her phone, "so I don't interrupt my things." So she doesn't interrupt her things. In my living room. In my house. Little by little, my social life disappeared, and with it disappeared the witnesses to what was happening. But the worst was yet to come. The worst was when I started to notice that Victoria wasn't just changing the house. She was changing my son. Matthew had always been affectionate. He called me every other day before they came to live with me. He asked how I was. He told me about his job at the hardware store. He made bad jokes that made me smile. But now, living under the same roof, he barely spoke to me. He came home late from work and went straight to his room. If I tried to ask him about his day, he would respond with one-word answers. Fine, tired. We'll talk later. But that later never came. One night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom. The wall was thin. Your mother asked me if we can go with her to the doctor on Tuesday, Matthew was saying. And what for? She's an adult. She can go alone. Victoria, she's my mother. Exactly, she's your mother, not mine. I have enough to do working and keeping this house in order. I'm not going to be her nurse, too. There was silence. I waited for Matthew to defend me. I waited for him to say something, anything. But he didn't say anything. And in that silence, I understood something terrible. My son was choosing her over me. Not dramatically or cruelly, just with silence, with absence, with that letting her talk without contradicting her. I got into bed trembling, not from cold, but from helpless rage. The next day, I went to the doctor alone, and that's how everything was. Alone at the market, alone at the parent-teacher meetings, even though I was about to retire, alone in this house full of people that felt increasingly empty. Victoria started cooking only for herself and Matthew. She said it was because they were on a special diet. They left the dirty dishes for me to wash. They hogged the living room TV for their shows. They played music I didn't understand. They had visitors they didn't introduce to me. And I kept shrinking, becoming a little more invisible in my own life every day, until the padlock arrived. And that padlock was the final straw, because I realized something. They weren't sharing my house, they were taking it from me. But what they didn't know is that I still had an ace up my sleeve, something that even Matthew didn't know. My son looked at me as if I were a piece of old furniture in the way, and that hurt more than 1,000 padlocks. Matthew was born on a summer morning in July, with thunder outside and my hand gripping Robert's until it was bruised. It was a difficult birth, 36 hours of labor. But when I placed him on my chest for the first time, with his eyes barely open and that cry that tore my soul apart, I swore I would protect him from everything. I never imagined that one day I would have to protect myself from him, or rather from his silence. Because Matthew didn't hurt me with shouts or insults. He hurt me by disappearing, by becoming a ghost who lived in my house, but no longer lived with me. It was Wednesday. I remember because on Wednesdays, I got home early from school at 2 o'clock, and I used to find him eating in the kitchen. We would talk about everything, about his work at the hardware store, how things were with his customers, that boss who, according to him, didn't even know how to hammer a nail. But that Wednesday, 3 days after the padlock incident, I arrived and the house was silent. Victoria wasn't there. Matthew was. I saw him sitting in the living room looking at his cell phone with a frown. "Son," I said from the doorway, "did you already eat? I can make us some chili." He looked up for barely a second. "I'm not hungry, Mum. Thank you." And he went back to his screen. I stood there, my bag still hanging from my shoulder, feeling like I had just talked to a wall. "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Did something happen at work?" "No." "Matthew, look at me." He sighed, that long sigh you use when someone is annoying you. He put his cell phone on the sofa and finally looked at me, but his eyes were empty, as if he saw me but didn't recognize me. "What is it, Mum?" "That's what I'm asking you. We don't talk anymore. You don't tell me anything anymore. You live here, but it's like you're not here." He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture he's made since he was a kid when he was uncomfortable. "It's just that I'm tired. Work is hard. Don't take it personally." "Don't take it personally." The same words Victoria used about the padlock. What about Sunday? Chloe told me you invited her to eat with you, but you didn't tell me. His face changed. He tensed up. It was a last-minute thing. I thought you had plans. What plans would I have? I live here. This is my house. Mum, don't start. Start what? Wanting to talk to my own son? He stood up from the sofa. He no longer looked me in the eyes. Look, Victoria and I are trying to build our lives. We need space. We can't be thinking about, you know, about me. You can't be thinking about me. It's not that. Then what is it? Silence. That damned silence that had become his answer for everything. I have to go out, he finally said. Victoria is waiting for me. And he left. Just like that, leaving me with words stuck in my throat and a broken heart. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed looking at the ceiling, remembering the boy Matthew was, the one who climbed into my bed when he had nightmares, the one who made me drawings in elementary school and proudly taped them to the refrigerator, the one who hugged me tight and said, "When I grow up, I'm going to build you a huge house, Mum, with a yard and everything." Where had that boy gone? The following days were worse. Matthew started avoiding me completely. He left before I woke up. He came back late when I was already in my room, and when we coincided in the kitchen or the hallway, he would look down and quicken his pace, as if I were an uncomfortable stranger. But what finally broke me was what I discovered a week later. It was Saturday morning. Victoria had left early for the hair salon. That weekly routine that, according to her, was indispensable and cost $80 every time. Matthew was in the shower, and I, cleaning the living room as I always did, found a manila envelope forgotten between the sofa cushions. I didn't want to snoop. I really didn't. But the envelope had the bank logo, and it was open. Inside was a statement from my son, and there was also a paper with my handwriting, a letter I had written 2 years ago, when Matthew asked me to borrow money. My hands started to shake when I read it. "Mum, I promise I'll pay you back the $180,000 as soon as we get the loan approved. It's for the down payment on our house. Victoria and I already found one in the suburbs, perfect for starting out. I swear on Dad's memory that I will pay you back. I love you, Matthew." $180,000. The savings that Robert and I put together for years for our retirement. The money I was saving for emergencies, so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone in my old age. I lent it to him because he was my son, because I trusted him, because he told me it was for their house. But according to the bank statement I held in my hands, dated just 1 month ago, there was no house. There was a charge of $320,000 for a premium auto dealership. A car. They had bought a luxury car with my money and the bank loan, and they never told me anything. I felt the floor moving. I sat down on the sofa because my legs couldn't hold me anymore. I read the statement over and over, looking for an error, some explanation that wasn't the obvious one. But there was no error. My son had lied to me. He had used me. He had taken my life savings and spent them on a whim to please his wife. I heard the shower turn off, Matthew's footsteps approaching. I quickly put the papers back in the envelope and left it where it was. When he came out, with wet hair and a towel around his neck, he looked surprised. "Oh, you're here." "Yes, I was cleaning." He nodded, uncomfortable. He went to the sofa, took the envelope without saying anything, and went to his room. He didn't even pretend an explanation. That afternoon, when Victoria returned with freshly styled hair and bright red nails, I saw her differently. I saw her get into that latest model grey car parked outside, the one they supposedly bought with their savings, with my savings. And something inside me broke definitively. It wasn't just the money, it was the betrayal. It was knowing that my own son saw me as a bank, as someone he could take from without giving, as someone whose needs didn't matter. That night, while they ate dinner in the kitchen, talking and laughing as if nothing had happened, I stayed in my room. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. Instead, I felt something cold and clear, a decision forming like ice in my chest. I opened my closet, I moved the old shoeboxes, and I took out the blue tin box my mother inherited to me before she died. Inside, there were things Matthew didn't know about, things Victoria would never imagine. Documents, deeds, and a will that was still in my favor. Because it turns out my son forgot something very important. This house had an owner, and that owner was still alive, still sane, and now very, very angry. What came next, neither they nor I saw coming. But when I did it, it changed everything forever. At the back of my closet, I kept something they didn't know existed. My true power. The blue tin box was barely 12 inches long. It had faded flowers painted on the lid and a small dent on the corner, a memory from when it fell during the move to this house 25 years ago. To anyone who saw it, it was just an old, worthless object. But for me, it was a war chest. I took it out that Saturday night, after discovering the truth about the money. I placed it on my bed carefully, like someone unearthing something sacred. My hands trembled as I opened the rusted lid. The smell of old paper hit me first. Then I saw what was inside. Yellowed envelopes, carefully folded documents, photographs, and a small black notebook with frayed corners. My mother's notebook. There, in her precise, slanted handwriting, were noted all the lessons she gave me before she died. "Eleanor," she told me on her last lucid day, her eyes dimmed by cancer, but her voice firm. "Never ever let anyone think you are foolish just because you are kind. Kindness is not weakness, and a woman who knows how to keep silent at the right time is more dangerous than 100 shouting men." I smiled at the memory of her. My mother had been a teacher too, and she taught me that information is power. I took out the first document, the house deed, original, sealed, notarized. In my name. Eleanor Monica Salazar, widow of Guzman. Not a single letter mentioned Matthew or Victoria or anyone else. This house was mine, completely, without debts, without mortgages, without conditions. I had inherited it from my parents when they died, and Robert and I remodeled it with our own savings. Every brick, every window, every bathroom tile had been paid for with the sweat of 2 teachers who worked 40 years non-stop. Matthew knew it, or at least he once did. But perhaps Victoria had made him forget it. Or perhaps he had chosen to forget it because it was convenient for him to think this house would be his someday. I took out the second document, my will. I had drawn it up 5 years ago, when Robert and I decided to put everything in order. Back then, it left the house divided equally among my 3 children, Matthew, Chloe, and Brittany. But that will could be changed. And a dark part of me, the one that had been dormant for too long, started to seriously consider that possibility. I kept checking. I found copies of the electricity, water, gas, and property tax bills, all in my name, all paid by me for the last 3 years, even though Matthew and Victoria contributed $1,500 monthly, which barely covered the groceries. $1,500. A mockery. The property tax alone cost $3,200 every 2 months. Electricity, $1,800. Gas, $1,100. Maintenance, repairs, unexpected expenses, All of that was paid by me with my teacher's retirement. $11,000 monthly that evaporated maintaining a house for 3 people where only I put in real money. But the most interesting thing was at the bottom of the box. A white business card with blue letters. Franklin Foster, attorney and notary, family and estate law. Franklin had been a third-grade student of mine, more than 30 years ago, one of the most respected lawyers in the district, and he owed me a huge favor. I had convinced his mother not to take him out of school when she wanted to put him to work. "Teacher Eleanor," he had told me at Robert's funeral, squeezing my hand tightly, "anything you need, anything at all, just look me up. You changed my life." I looked at the card. Then I looked at the documents. And then, for the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't sadness or rage. I felt control. The next morning, Sunday, I waited for Matthew and Victoria to leave. They had arranged to go to brunch with her parents, another one of those gatherings to which I was never invited. As soon as I heard the car drive away, I took my cell phone and dialed Franklin's number. He answered on the third ring. "Teacher Eleanor?" "Franklin, dear, forgive me for bothering you on a Sunday." "You are never a bother. Are you okay? Did something happen?" The genuine concern in his voice almost made me cry. It had been so long since someone truly worried about me. "I need your help. I need to review some documents and maybe, just maybe, make some changes." There was a pause. "Changes to your will?" "Among other things." "Can I ask what's going on?" And then, sitting there on my bed with the blue box open in front of me, I told him everything. The padlock, the humiliations, the $180,000, the way my own house had become a prison where I was the intruder. Franklin listened without interrupting. When I finished, his silence was different. It wasn't discomfort. It was someone calculating, thinking, planning. "Teacher, do you have proof of all this?" "I have receipts. I have the bank statement I found. I have text messages where Matthew promised to pay me back the money." "And is the house completely in your name?" "Completely, no debts, nothing." "Perfect." His voice sounded firmer. "Then this is what we're going to do." For the next hour, Franklin explained a plan to me. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. It was setting legal boundaries that Victoria and Matthew couldn't break. First, update my will with a different notary, one they didn't know. Leave everything to my daughters, with a special clause stating that Matthew could only inherit if he paid me back the $180,000 before my death. If he didn't, his share would be divided between Chloe and Brittany. Second, make a notarized inventory of all my belongings inside the house. Furniture, appliances, jewelry, everything, to make it clear what was mine and what was theirs. Third, prepare a legal ultimatum. If they didn't start paying a fair rent, calculated at $500 monthly, which was cheap for a house that size, or didn't move out within 3 months, I could initiate an eviction process. "But Franklin," I said, my voice shaky, "he's my son." "I know, teacher. And that's why I'm giving him options that aren't throwing him out on the street tomorrow. But you have to protect yourself. What they are doing to you is not love. It's abuse." That word hit me like cold water. Abuse. Was it that? Could it be called abuse when it came from your own son? "Think about it," Franklin continued. "But don't take too long. The more time passes, the harder it will be to get your house and your peace back." We hung up. I remained sitting on the bed, surrounded by papers, feeling like I had just crossed an invisible line. But the line had already been crossed, only not by me. I put everything back in the blue box. I hid it in the back of the closet, behind the winter boxes that no one touched. When Matthew and Victoria returned that afternoon, they found me in the kitchen, preparing chicken soup, as always, like the harmless old lady they thought I was. "Smells good," Matthew said, surprised to see me cooking. "I thought we were supposed to be dieting," Victoria added in a sharp tone. I smiled. That smile I had perfected in 40 years of dealing with difficult parents. "It's just for me. You two do your own thing." Victoria blinked, confused by my neutral tone. Matthew looked at me with something that almost seemed like guilt, but neither of them said anything, and I continued stirring my soup, calm, while in my mind the pieces were already moving on a board they didn't even know existed. Because I had learned something important. The one who shouts the loudest doesn't always win. Sometimes the one who knows how to wait in silence wins, with a teacher's patience and a surgeon's precision. And I had waited long enough. But before taking the next step, something happened that almost ruined everything. Something that made me question whether I truly knew the people I lived with. That day, in front of the whole family, they treated me as if I were nothing. But I let them talk, because every word was a rope with which they were hanging themselves. It was Matthew's birthday, 35 years old. Before, these dates were sacred in our family. Robert would wake up early to hang streamers. I would bake his favourite cake. Strawberry shortcake. Chloe and Brittany would arrive with gifts wrapped in shiny paper and hugs that lasted forever. But this year was different. "I'm going to organise something small," Victoria told me 2 weeks earlier, while painting her nails in the living room. "Just us and my family. Something intimate." "What about the girls?" I asked, referring to my daughters. "Oh, Eleanor, you know how it is. They always end up arguing over silly things. Better to avoid drama." They weren't arguing over silly things. They were arguing because Victoria treated them with the same disdain she showed me. But Matthew never defended them. "What about the food?" I tried again. "I can make the turkey and mashed potatoes that Matthew likes, or some lasagna." "Don't worry. I'm going to cater everything. You just relax." Relax. As if I were a guest in my own house, on my own son's birthday. The day arrived, Saturday, April 23rd, sticky mid-year heat. From early on, Victoria began transforming the house. She took down the paintings I had discreetly rehung. She put up modern centerpieces with artificial flowers. She changed the tablecloths for minimalist grey ones that, according to her, matched the decor. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, invisible, while she ordered and organized in my house as if it were hers. "Matthew, move that chair. No, not there. More toward the corner. Perfect." My son obeyed without a word, moving furniture back and forth, sweating in a white t-shirt. "Do you need help?" I offered. Victoria didn't even turn around. "No, we're almost done." "Oh, yes. You could go to your room while we set up. It's just that we're going to use the living room and we don't want anything to get in the way." Anything to get in the way. Or anyone. I went to my room like a punished child. I closed the door and sat on the bed, feeling the heat rising up my neck, the humiliation, the contained rage. But I stayed quiet. I took my cell phone from the nightstand and put it on silent mode. I left it on my dresser, strategically propped against a book, with the camera pointing toward the slightly open door. I started recording. If my years of teaching had taught me anything, it was this. When someone is hurting you, document it. Words are forgotten. Witnesses change their story. But a video doesn't lie. At 6 o'clock, the guests started to arrive. First came Victoria's parents, Mr. Jack and Mrs. Patricia. Yes, that was her name. And believe me, the name fit her perfectly for how unbearable she was. Mrs. Patricia entered wearing a floral dress and expensive sunglasses, carrying a cake from a fancy bakery. She looked at the living room with a critical eye, as if evaluating whether everything was up to her standards. "Oh, honey, you did a great job. Your good taste shows." Your good taste, in my house, with my furniture pushed into the corners. Then came Victoria's sister, Michelle, with her husband and their two spoiled children, who immediately started running around the house, shouting like animals. One of them knocked over my African violet plant. No one said anything. They didn't even pick it up. I stood in the hallway, dressed in my Sunday blouse and pearl earrings, waiting for someone to greet me. No one did. Victoria walked past me as if I were part of the wall. Mr. Jack looked at me sideways and nodded his head, but didn't say a word. Mrs. Patricia outright ignored me. Matthew? Matthew was too busy opening bottles of wine and playing music. I sat in the corner chair, the one they had pushed next to the bookcase, and watched. The dining table was full of food I hadn't cooked. Sushi, fine cuts of meat, gourmet salads, bottles of wine that cost more than $50 each, artisan bread, French desserts, all paid for with money they supposedly didn't have, the same money that justified why they couldn't pay me a fair rent. "Cheers to my son," Victoria shouted, raising her glass. "To his 35th birthday, and may this be the start of our best time together." Our best time. As if I hadn't been there for his first 35 years. As if I hadn't birthed him, raised him, educated him, supported him when he didn't have a job, consoled him when his girlfriends left him. Everyone toasted, the glasses clinked, laughter filled the room, and no one, absolutely no one, toasted to me. Then Mrs. Patricia, with 3 glasses of wine in her and that condescending tone people who think they are superior use, dropped the bomb. "Oh, Victoria, it's so good that you two are so patient. Not everyone can stand living with their mother-in-law, right?" She laughed that fake laugh that made my skin crawl. "You must be very grateful to them. Not all modern children sacrifice themselves like this, taking care of their parents instead of abandoning them somewhere. Sacrifice, taking care, as if I were the burden." Victoria smiled, looking down with false modesty. "Oh, Mom, she does what she can. It's hard at her age, right? But we manage, with patience." Mom. That word that had sounded affectionate the first few months and was now poison wrapped in honey. "The thing is," Michelle continued, pouring herself more wine, "I tell my husband that when his mother is old, there's no way she's coming to live with us. Straight to the nursing home. It's the healthiest thing for everyone." Laughter erupted. Matthew smiled uncomfortably, but he didn't say anything. Nothing. Mr. Jack added his 2 cents. "Well, I think it's fine to help up to a point, but there comes a time when old people have to understand that their cycle is over and let the young people live." The old people. They talked about me as if I weren't there, as if I were an object that eventually needed to be gotten rid of. Mrs. Patricia looked directly at me for the first time all night. "Right, Eleanor. You understand that they need their space. They're young. They have dreams. They can't be burdened with, well, you know what I mean." I remained silent. I smiled. That smile I had perfected in weeks of enduring insults disguised as advice. And I let them keep talking, because my cell phone was still recording. Every word, every cruel laugh, every derogatory comment. Victoria brought the cake. They sang "Happy Birthday." Matthew blew out the candles and made a wish. They asked him what he had wished for, and he, looking at Victoria with love in his eyes, said, "I wish we could have our own house soon, to start our life for real. Our life for real. As if these 3 years had been a lie. As if I were a temporary obstacle." I got up from my chair, My legs were trembling, but I kept my back straight. 40 years of standing in front of 30 children every day had taught me to have presence. I'm going to my room. Enjoy your party. No one stopped me. No one said, "Don't go." No one asked if I was okay. Victoria just mumbled, "Get some rest, Mum." I closed my bedroom door. I stopped the recording. 3 hours and 40 minutes of documented humiliation. I sat on the bed with the cell phone in my hands. I pressed play. I listened to everything again. And this time I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity, because they had just given me exactly what I needed. Irrefutable evidence that I wasn't imagining anything, that it wasn't my fault, that this was abuse disguised as shared living. I saved the video to the cloud. I made 3 backup copies. I sent one to Franklin Foster's email with the subject, "Urgent, additional evidence." Then I lay down, and for the first time in months, I slept completely, because I was no longer alone in this war. I had allies, I had proof, and above all, I had a plan. What they didn't know is that they had just dug their own grave, and I would hold the shovel. The next day, I did something Victoria will never forget. Something as simple as a letter, but as devastating as an earthquake. When Victoria read that letter, I saw the colour drain from her face, because the right words, spoken at the precise moment, are worth more than 1,000 shouts. Sunday dawned quiet, too quiet. That uncomfortable stillness that remains after a storm, when the air still smells of electricity and destruction. Matthew and Victoria didn't come out of their room until 11 o'clock. I had been awake for 2 hours. I had drunk my coffee, watered the plants I had left, and done something I had been planning all night. On the dining room table, among the remnants of the party that no one had cleaned up, I saw the padlock. They had left it lying there, next to the empty bottles and dirty dishes, as if it were trash. As if it hadn't been the symbol of my humiliation just days before. I picked it up. It was light, cheap. The kind of lock you buy at any hardware store for $5. Nothing special. But for me, it represented a line that had been crossed. I went to the kitchen drawer where I kept my tools. I took out some old pliers that Robert used for his household repairs. The lock gave easily. Too easily. With a little force and the right angle, the shackle opened without a problem. I smiled. That symbolic lock, so full of power in Victoria's mind, was worthless. It was pure theatre, pure illusion of control, just like everything she had built in this house. I left the broken lock on the kitchen counter where she would see it. But that wasn't enough. I needed to send a clearer message, more permanent. I went to my room. I took out paper and a pen. Not the computer, not a text message, a handwritten letter. Because there is something about handwritten letters that makes the words weigh more, that makes them stick deeper. I sat down at my desk, the same one where I had checked the homework of hundreds of students for decades, and I wrote, not with rage, but with surgical precision. Victoria, I have decided not to say anything about the padlock because I understand that you come from a family where distrust is normal. I don't blame you for that. Everyone brings their traumas and their ways of seeing the world. But I want you to know something very important. Something you may have forgotten, or that you were never clearly told. This house has an owner, and that owner is me. The documents are in my name. Original deeds, notarized, impossible to modify without my physical presence, my current ID, and my fingerprint. My lawyer, Mr. Franklin Foster, has certified copies of everything. And believe me when I say he is very good at what he does. I know about the power of attorney you wanted me to sign 6 months ago. That paper you accidentally left on the table with the important parts marked in yellow. I'm not foolish, Victoria. I'm a teacher. I taught over 800 children to read for 42 years. I can read between the lines better than you imagine. I also know about the $180,000 my son borrowed from me for the down payment on his house. That house that never existed. That money that turned into a car you drive every day. And I know what you said about me last night. I recorded every word. This is not a threat. It is information. Information that you need to make better decisions from now on. This is your only warning. If you try to put a lock on me again, literally or metaphorically, you will meet the Eleanor you do not want to meet. The one who, think carefully before your next move. With the cordiality I still have left, Eleanor Monica Salazar, widow of Guzman, legal owner of this house. I folded the letter into 3 perfect parts. I put it in a manila envelope, and in clear handwriting I wrote on the front, "For Victoria. Personal and confidential." I went to the pantry. The door was still there, unlocked, open as it should have been all along. I taped the envelope to the center, at eye level, with thick tape. Impossible not to see. Then I went to the kitchen. I prepared a cup of chamomile tea and sat down to wait. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:30, I heard footsteps. Victoria entered the kitchen, shuffling in her slippers, her hair messy and looking hungover. She headed straight for the coffee maker. Then she saw it, the broken padlock on the counter. She stopped dead. She picked up the lock. She examined it. She frowned. Then she looked towards the pantry, and there was the envelope. Large, manila, with her name on it. I saw her turn pale even before she opened it. She took the envelope with trembling hands. She opened it clumsily, tearing the paper. She took out the letter and started to read. I continued drinking my tea, seemingly calm, apparently distracted, looking out the window at the garden. But I was watching her reflection in the glass. I saw her eyes widen with each line. I saw her mouth open into an O of surprise. I saw her hands begin to tremble by the time she reached the middle of the letter. When she finished reading, she slowly folded the letter. She looked at me. I didn't look away from the garden. "Eleanor." Her voice sounded small, scared. I didn't answer. "Eleanor, I didn't. This is a misunderstanding." I slowly turned my head. I looked her in the eyes, and I didn't smile. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't smile. Which part is a misunderstanding? The padlock I saw with my own eyes? The money that your husband's bank statement proves? Or the things you said about me last night, recorded on video with the date and time? She was speechless. The letter trembled in her hands. We were just... Save it." My voice came out firm, cold. "I don't want explanations. I want you to understand that this house is mine, that I decide who lives here and under what conditions. And if you disrespect me in any way again, you leave. No discussion, no second chances. But Matthew is my son, and he will always have my love. But this house is mine, and in my house there is respect. Or you find somewhere else to live." The silence that followed was dense, heavy, electric. Victoria pressed the letter against her chest. For a moment, I thought she was going to cry, or scream, or make one of those dramatic scenes she was so fond of. But she didn't do any of that. She just nodded, barely, almost imperceptibly, and she went to her room without saying a word. I heard the door close, then muffled voices, Matthew asking what was wrong, Victoria crying, explaining, maybe exaggerating. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was recovering something. Not all of my house, not all of my life, but a small, vital piece of my dignity. I finished my tea, I washed my cup, and I went for a walk in the neighborhood park, where no one knew me, where no one judged me, where I could breathe without feeling like the air was being rationed. When I returned 2 hours later, the manila envelope had disappeared from the pantry. The broken padlock was still on the counter, but now there was a note next to it, in Matthew's handwriting. "Mum, we need to talk." I took the note, I crumpled it in my fist, and I smiled. Because finally, after 3 years of silence, my son wanted to talk. And I had a lot to say. That conversation changed everything, but not in the way I expected. They thought I was scared, but I was just waiting for the perfect moment. Matthew's note stayed on the counter for 2 days. 2 full days where none of the three of us spoke beyond the strictly necessary. Good morning. Good night. Do you need the bathroom? Nothing else. The house became a minefield where every step had to be measured, where every door closing sounded like a gunshot, where the silence was so dense it could almost be cut with a knife. Victoria avoided my gaze. When we coincided in the kitchen, she took what she needed and left quickly, like a scared mouse. She no longer played music loudly. She no longer reorganized my things without permission. She no longer made hurtful comments disguised as jokes. For the first time in 3 years, there was fear in her eyes when she saw me. And I won't lie, a dark part of me enjoyed that fear. But I knew this was temporary, that the initial fear would turn into resentment. That resentment would turn into strategy. That Victoria was not one to give up easily. So I didn't give up either. I started documenting everything. Everything. I bought a new notebook at the corner stationery store. Green with a spiral. On the first page, I wrote Household Expense Log, April 2025, and started jotting down every dollar that left my pocket. Electricity, $184.70. Water, $63.40. Gas, $112. Property tax, $320. Groceries, $450. Internet, $59.90. Phone, $25. Total monthly I paid, $1,215. Matthew and Victoria's contribution, $150. The numbers didn't lie. I was subsidizing their lives with over $1,000 monthly. And that's not counting the space, the furniture, the appliances, the use of the car they sometimes took without asking permission. But the numbers weren't enough. I needed more. I started recording conversations. Not all the time, only when there was something important. My cell phone was always in my apron pocket, in record mode, discreet. Like that Thursday afternoon when I heard Victoria talking on the phone on the patio. She thought I had gone out. She didn't know I had come back for my sweater. "No, Mum, I'm not exaggerating. She's become unbearable. Now she's acting like a vigilante, as if she were the owner of—" She paused. Someone said something to her on the other end. "Well, yes, she is the legal owner. But after everything we've done for her, right? We've been taking care of her, putting up with her old lady quirks for 3 years. Taking care of her. Putting up with. Old lady." I saved the recording with the date and time. I also started making copies of everything. Receipts, statements, messages. I kept them in a yellow folder that I hid at my friend Rose's house. "Are you okay, Eleanor?" she asked me while we had coffee in her kitchen, worried about the dark circles under my eyes. "You look different." "I'm getting ready," I simply told her, "for something big." I didn't tell her everything. Not yet. but I left her the folder with clear instructions. If something happens to me, you give this to Franklin Foster. He'll know what to do. Rose squeezed my hand, scared. Don't say that. Nothing is going to happen to you. I know, but it's always better to be prepared. Meanwhile, at home, I continued my act. I started feigning mild dementia, strategic forgetfulness, calculated confusion. "Oh, I already ate," I would ask at dinner, even though I had eaten perfectly 2 hours earlier. "What day is today?" I would murmur, looking at the calendar with a frown. "Where did I leave my glasses?" I would search all over the living room when they were hanging around my neck. I saw Matthew and Victoria exchange glances that said, "See? It's starting. She's losing it. Perfect. Let them think that." Because while they thought I was confused and weak, I was moving pieces on a board they couldn't see. I called Franklin 3 times that week. "I want to change my will," I told him in the first call. "Are you sure, teacher?" "Completely." In the second call, I asked him to research if it was legal to record conversations in my own house. He confirmed that it was, that anything recorded on my own property was admissible as evidence. In the third call, I told him about my plan. "It's risky," Franklin warned me. "But if you're determined, I support you. Just promise me you won't do anything without consulting me first." "I promise," I lied, because I already had the next step planned. On Friday night, Matthew finally knocked on my door. "Mum, can we talk?" "Come in, son." He entered slowly, his hands in his pockets. He sat on the edge of my bed, in the same spot where he sat as a child when he had nightmares. "About the letter, you read it?" "Victoria showed it to me. I didn't know you felt that way." That phrase almost made me laugh. Or cry. I didn't know if it was honesty or willful blindness. "Matthew, look at me." He looked up. His eyes were Robert's, the same brown eyes with golden flecks that made me fall in love 40 years ago. "Did you really not know? Or did you not want to know?" He remained silent. And in that silence, I found my answer. "The $180,000, he began. "I don't want to talk about that now. But, Mum, I will pay you back. I swear, it's just that—" "Matthew," my voice came out firm, "I didn't come into this world to be paid back. I came to be respected. And in my own house, I don't feel respected. Do you understand the difference?" He nodded slowly. His eyes were glassy. "I'm sorry." "I know, but I'm sorry isn't enough. I need to see changes, real changes." "What do you want me to do?" And there it was, the question I had been waiting for. "I want you to let me live in peace in my house. I want your wife to treat me with basic respect. And I want you to start contributing fairly to the expenses or find your own place." He stood up abruptly. "Are you kicking us out?" "No. I'm giving you options. $500 monthly in rent. It's cheap for this house. Or you can save up and look for your own place, like you always said you were going to do." "But, Mum, we don't have that money right now." "You have money for a luxury car, for expensive clothes, for hair salons and restaurants." My voice didn't tremble. "You have money. You just don't want to use it on me." He stood there in the middle of the room, divided between two loyalties. And once again, he chose silence. "Think about it," I said softly. "You have 1 month." He left my room without saying anything more. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling, wondering if I had been too hard, if I had crossed a line I couldn't come back from. But when morning came, and I saw the sun coming through my window, illuminating Robert's photo on the nightstand, I knew I had done the right thing. because love without respect is not love. It's a habit. And I had been a habit for too long. It was time to be a decision. What happened next surprised even me, because it turned out I wasn't the only one with secrets in this house. When I opened that chest in front of them, their eyes filled with greed. They didn't know it was a trap. The 1-month deadline I gave Matthew passed like sand through my fingers. 30 days where the tension in the house was so thick you could almost chew it. Victoria continued to avoid me, but I noticed something different in her gaze when she thought I wasn't looking. She was calculating, planning, waiting. I was too. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of those hot May afternoons where the air doesn't move and everything seems to stop. I was in my room, reorganizing my summer closet. I took out old boxes, dresses I no longer wore, shoes saved from Robert's time. And then accidentally I left my bedroom door ajar. Just as Victoria was walking down the hallway, I heard her footsteps stop. Then, that held breath of someone who is seeing something they shouldn't be seeing but can't look away. In my hands, I held the burgundy velvet chest. It was beautiful, I have to admit. It was about 16 inches long and 10 inches wide. The velvet was worn at the corners, but it retained that dark red, almost blood colour, that gave it an air of antiquity and mystery. It had golden engravings on the lid, intertwined initials that were barely distinguishable anymore. It had belonged to my maternal grandmother. It passed to my mother, and then to me. Inside, I kept the family jewels. There weren't many. We weren't rich. But every piece had a story. It had weight. It had sentimental and economic value. I opened the chest slowly, like someone uncovering a treasure, knowing perfectly well that Victoria was watching me from the hallway. I took out the pearl necklace. 36 natural, irregular pearls, with that creamy luster that only real pearls give. Robert had given it to me on our 20th anniversary. He had saved for 2 years to buy it. Then, the gold earrings with emeralds. Small, discreet, but genuine. An inheritance from my grandmother, who received them from her own mother during the Great Depression. The Art Deco brooch, made of silver and onyx. A piece from the 1930s that my mother wore on special occasions and was worth, according to the last appraisal I had 10 years ago, around $2,500. And finally, the ring. The engagement ring Robert gave me under a jacaranda tree in Central Park. White gold with a small but brilliant diamond, surrounded by tiny sapphires. I put them on my bed, one by one, admiring them under the light coming through the window. And then, as if I had just noticed her presence, I turned towards the door. "Oh, Victoria, I didn't see you there." She took a step forward, her eyes fixed on the jewels. She wasn't even pretending to be discreet anymore. "Is that real?" I smiled, that proud grandmother smile showing her treasures. "Yes, dear. They are family heirlooms. They've been with us for generations." I took the pearl necklace and let it run through my fingers. This necklace is almost 50 years old. The pearls are natural, see? Not like the ones nowadays that are all cultured and uniform. Victoria moved closer, mesmerized. "Can I—" She held out her hand. I gave her the necklace. She took it with exaggerated care, like someone holding something invaluable, which it truly was. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Her eyes shone in a way that reminded me of a child in front of a candy store display. "It must be worth a lot." "Well, I've never sold it. But yes, I suppose so." The old appraisal said that, altogether, there was about $20,000 worth. But that was 10 years ago. Who knows now? I saw her swallow, how her fingers caressed the pearls with reverence mixed with avarice. "And this will someday belong to—" To Matthew, I completed the sentence. Well, to you both. For when I'm gone, of course. They are for the family. Something changed in her expression. A light came on in her eyes. A dangerous light that I knew very well because I had seen it in parents when they discovered that a teacher had something they wanted. "Where do you keep something so valuable?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Right here, in my closet. I've always kept it here. Although lately I've been thinking that maybe I should put it in a safety deposit box. You know, just in case." "Yes, it would be safer," she said quickly. "I can help you take it to the bank if you want." I'd bet anything she did. "Oh dear, how kind. Yes, maybe one of these days we'll do it together." I gently took the necklace from her and put everything back in the chest. I closed it with the small key that hung from a little chain. Victoria followed every movement with her eyes. "Well, I'll let you rest," she finally said, but her feet didn't move. She kept looking at the chest as if she wanted to imprint it on her memory. When she finally left, I waited 5 minutes. Then I casually walked out of my room and past the living room. Victoria was on the sofa with her cell phone, but she wasn't watching videos or social media. She was on Google. I read the searches on her screen from the reflection in the hallway mirror. Natural pearl necklace price. Antique jewelry value US. Family heirloom jewelry, who inherits? I smiled to myself and kept walking. For the next few days, Victoria completely changed. She was suddenly kind, soliciting. She asked if I needed help with groceries. She offered to make me tea. She even tried to cook something special for me, even though it tasted horrible. "Eleanor," she said to me one Wednesday afternoon, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "Have you thought about the bank thing? I have time tomorrow. We can go together to open the safety deposit box." "Oh yes, but I don't know. I'm afraid they'll ask for a lot of paperwork." "Don't worry. I'll help you with everything. I can even put my name on the box too. So if something happens to you, we'll have access. You know, for Matthew's sake." There was the real motive. "What a great idea," I said, feigning innocence. "Let me think about it." But I didn't think about it. Instead, I called Franklin. "She took the bait," I told him on the phone that night, locked in my bathroom with the water running so they wouldn't hear me. "Are you sure about this, teacher? It's a risk." "I know, but I need her to show her true intentions. And this is perfect. Do you want me to prepare the documents?" "Yes, but with the clause we discussed." The next day, I told Victoria that I had made an appointment at the bank for Friday. Her face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Perfect. I'll go with you. Don't worry about a thing." Friday arrived. We went to the bank. We opened a safety deposit box. We put the jewelry chest inside. And we signed the papers. What Victoria didn't know, because she didn't read the fine print that the executive explained quickly and she signed without paying attention, was that the box required 2 keys to open. One I had. The other was held by Franklin Foster, with very specific legal instructions. It could only be opened if I died of natural causes, certified by doctors, and after a full notarial review of my last wishes. If something happened to me, suspiciously, the box would automatically be frozen, and its contents would go into a legal investigation. Victoria technically had access to the box. Her name was on the papers, but she couldn't open it without me. And if I died, she couldn't open it either without going through a legal process that would expose any irregularity. It was the perfect trap. We left the bank. Victoria was happy, believing she had won something, that she had secured her future. She didn't know that she had just signed her own sentence, because I wasn't just protecting myself from her. I was protecting myself from any convenient accident that might befall me. And above all, I was creating evidence of her true character. Evidence that I would soon need. What happened next was so fast that even I wasn't prepared. Because Victoria made a mistake that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning when everything exploded, and I made sure there were witnesses. The calm after the bank visit lasted exactly 12 days. 12 days where Victoria acted like the perfect daughter-in-law. She asked about my health. She offered to take me to the doctor. She even gave me a wool shawl so you don't get cold at night. I accepted everything with smiles and thanks. But inside, I was preparing, because I knew this was the eye of the hurricane. That deceptive stillness before everything unleashes with fury. And I was right. On Thursday night, while feigning sleep, I heard voices in Matthew and Victoria's room. They were arguing, low but loud enough for me to catch isolated words. It can't go on like this. The house should be ours. She's old. How much longer? The notary said we can. My heart raced. I silently got out of bed, barefoot, and placed my cell phone in record mode against the wall we shared. The app Franklin had recommended amplified the sound. What I heard chilled my blood. My cousin works at a nursing home, Victoria was saying. He says that with a doctor's certificate that she can no longer care for herself, we can admit her, and then the house would be free. I don't know, Victoria. She's my mum. So what? She's been in the way for years. Look at us, Matthew. We can't have children because we live with your mother. We can't start our lives. This house should be ours since your dad died. But legally, there are ways. My uncle is a lawyer. He says that with a power of attorney and a diagnosis of senile dementia, we can take control of her assets. And you've seen how she's been lately. She forgets things. She confuses days. Even the doctor could certify that she's not well. I felt nauseous, not because of what they were planning, but because of how well my acting had worked. Too well. I don't know if I can do that. The mother is careful, but not scandalized, not outraged, as a son defending his mother should be. Oh, Matthew, don't be a coward. It's for our own good, for our future. Besides, she'll be cared for at the nursing home. It's better for everyone. The silence that followed was worse than any word, because it meant Matthew was considering it. My own son was considering locking me up to take my house. I saved the recording. I sent it to the cloud, to 3 different emails, and then I knew the moment had come. I couldn't wait any longer. On Friday morning, I called my 2 daughters. Chloe, Brittany, I need you to come to the house tomorrow. Both of you, at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's urgent. Are you okay, Mum? Chloe asked, alarmed. Yes, but I need you to be here and bring your husbands. It's important. Then I called Franklin. It's time. Are you sure? Completely. Prepare everything we discussed. The complete documentation. All of it. And I need you to come tomorrow at 10, with the notary if possible. Understood, teacher. Finally, I called my friend Rose. I need you to be here tomorrow as a witness and bring your fully charged cell phone. What are you going to do, Eleanor? I'm going to take my life back. Saturday dawned clear. One of those days where the sky is so blue it hurts to look at it. I got up early. I put on my best blouse, the blue one with white flowers that Robert gave me for our last anniversary. I put on my pearl earrings. I carefully styled my hair. If this was going to be a battle, I would enter like a queen. At 9:30, they started to arrive. First Chloe with her husband, Robert, my eldest daughter, with that worried look she hadn't lost since she was a child. Mum, what's going on? Wait until everyone is here, dear. Then Brittany with her husband, Jack, and my 2 grandchildren, Sebastian and Lucy. The children ran to hug me. Grandma, we haven't seen you in forever. I know, my loves, I know. Rose arrived promptly with a bag of donuts that she left on the dining room table. And finally, Franklin Foster with his leather briefcase and an older gentleman in a suit who he introduced as Notary Miller. Matthew and Victoria were in the kitchen having breakfast. When they saw so many people enter, their faces transformed. "What is this?" Victoria asked, standing up. "It's a family meeting," I said in a calm voice. "Sit down, everyone. I have important things to say." We settled into the living room. I in the main armchair, the one that had been Robert's, my daughters on the sides, Franklin and the notary standing next to me, the others scattered in chairs brought from the dining room. Victoria and Matthew remained standing, tense, like cornered animals. "You can sit down," I repeated. It wasn't a suggestion. They slowly sat on the grey sofa they had bought. I took a deep breath and began. "I have gathered you here because I need everyone to hear this, and I need witnesses to what I am about to say." I took out my cell phone. I connected it to the Bluetooth speaker and played the recording from Thursday night. Victoria's voice filled the room. "My cousin works at a nursing home. He says that with a doctor's certificate that she can no longer care for herself, we can admit her." I saw the colour drain from Matthew's face. How Victoria opened her mouth without any sound coming out. Chloe put her hand over her mouth. Brittany started to cry. I let the recording continue until the end. Until that part where Matthew didn't say no, where he only kept silent in complicity. When it finished, the silence in the room was absolute. "Mum," Matthew tried to speak. I raised my hand. "I haven't finished. This is not all." I took out the yellow folder I had stored at Rose's house. I opened it on the coffee table. "Here are all the receipts for this house for the last 3 years. Electricity, water, gas, property tax, maintenance, everything paid by me, with my $1,100 monthly retirement." I put another document on top. "Here is the bank statement that proves that the $180,000 I lent for a down payment on a house was used to buy a luxury car. A car I have never used, that they haven't even offered me to use." Another document. "And here are the screenshots of the messages between Victoria and her sister, where she literally says, 'A few more months of putting up with the old lady, and this house will be ours.'" Victoria suddenly stood up. "You spied on my phone. That's illegal." Franklin spoke for the first time, his voice professional and cold. "Actually, Mum, everything in this folder was legally obtained. The recordings were made on Mrs. Eleanor's private property, where she has every right to record. The documents are copies of originals, and the messages were photographed from a laptop that your husband left open in a common area of the house." Victoria turned towards Matthew. "Say something, don't just sit there." But Matthew didn't say anything. He stared at the floor, his eyes glassy. I continued because I still wasn't finished. "I want you to know," I said, looking directly at Matthew, "that this house will never be yours while I live. I have already modified my will. If something happens to me, the house is divided only between Chloe and Brittany. Matthew can only inherit if he first pays me back the $180,000 he owes me. If he doesn't pay it back before my death, his share is voided." Notary Miller took out a document. "Here is the updated will, signed and certified 3 days ago. It is completely legal and final." Matthew finally looked up. There were tears in his eyes. "Mum, I never wanted to." "Never wanted what, Matthew? Never wanted to keep quiet while your wife planned to lock me up? Never wanted to lie to me about the money? Never wanted to make me feel invisible in my own house?" My voice broke, but I remained firm. "I am going to give you one option. Only one. You have 30 days to leave this house. I can lend you $5,000 for a month's rent on an apartment. It is more than you deserve, but I am your mother, and I will not leave you on the street." "This is ridiculous," Victoria shouted. "You can't just kick us out like this." Franklin intervened again. "Yes, she can, Ma'am. This is her house. You do not have a rental agreement. You do not pay rent. Legally, you are guests who have overstayed their welcome. If you do not leave voluntarily in 30 days, we will proceed with a legal eviction. And with this evidence, believe me, we will win quickly." Victoria opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. But no coherent sound came out. Matthew, my son, the boy who once promised me he would build me a huge house, burst into tears. "Mum, forgive me, please." And there, seeing my son cry, I felt something inside me break too. But there was no turning back. What they didn't understand was simple. Love is not begged for. It is earned, and it is lost. And they had lost it a long time ago. Now I was just recovering what was always mine, my dignity. What happened in those 30 days was something I will never forget, for better or for worse. I gave them one last chance, to leave with dignity or to leave with shame. They chose, but it was too late for pride. The 30 days that followed that meeting were the strangest of my life. The house became a divided space, as if an invisible line separated enemy territories. They in their room, I in mine, and in the middle, a silence so heavy it hurt to breathe it. Victoria never spoke to me again, not once. When we coincided in the kitchen, she took what she needed and left like the devil was after her. Her eyes shot daggers of hatred at me every time she saw me. She no longer feigned kindness. There were no more masks. And in a twisted way, that gave me peace. Because finally we were being honest. But Matthew was different. My son became a ghost who wandered the house with slumped shoulders and a lost look. He lost weight. He stopped taking care of himself. Sometimes I found him sitting in the garden, staring at Robert's plants without really seeing anything. One afternoon, 11 days after the meeting, he knocked on my door. "Mum, can I come in?" I was embroidering a tablecloth, that activity that always calmed my nerves. I put down the needle. "Come in." He entered slowly, as if afraid of breaking something. He stood in the middle of the room, his hands in his pockets. "I want you to know that we already found an apartment, in the suburbs. It has 2 bedrooms. It's fine." "I'm glad." He nodded, but he didn't leave. There was something else he wanted to say and didn't know how. "Mum, I never wanted things to come to this." I put the embroidery on my lap. I looked him directly in the eyes, those eyes of Robert's that once looked at me with childish adoration. But they didn't they? "Yes," his voice broke. "And it's my fault. Not Victoria's. Mine. Because I failed you. I let everything happen. I kept quiet when I should have defended you." I felt something in my chest loosen, just a little. "Why, Matthew? Why did you do this to me?" He sat on the floor, right there, like when he was a child and came to confess that he had broken something or gotten a bad grade. Tears rolled down his cheeks uncontrollably. "Because I was scared of losing her. Victoria has always been intense, demanding, and I thought that if I didn't do what she wanted, she would leave me, like the others." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "I know it sounds pathetic. I know it's not an excuse, but it's the truth." "And me? Weren't you afraid of losing me? I thought you would always be there." that mothers always forgive, that I could do whatever, and you would still love me. The brutal honesty of that confession hit me like a stone, because he was right. I had allowed it. I had allowed him to believe that my love was unconditional to the point of self-destruction, that he could hurt me without consequences. A mother's love is great, Matthew, but it is not infinite. It has limits, and you crossed all of mine. He sobbed, hard, like a child who finally understands that actions have real consequences. Will you ever be able to forgive me? That question floated in the air between us. The truth is, I didn't know the answer. Not yet. I don't know, son. But I know this. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. And even if I forgive you someday, things will never be the same. Because I changed. And you will also have to change if you want to recover something of what you lost. He stayed sitting there, on my bedroom floor, crying like I hadn't seen him cry since he was 8 years old and fell off his bicycle. And I let him cry, because those tears were necessary. They were part of his learning. The following days were filled with boxes and moving. Matthew and Victoria packed their things with mechanical movements. I stayed in my room most of the time, letting the process happen without my presence. Chloe and Brittany came to help me organize the house afterward. We removed the grey furniture. We took the old furniture, the ones with history, out of storage. We put the terracotta curtains back up. We hung the California landscape paintings. "Are you okay, Mum?" Brittany asked me, while we hung the family photos Victoria had taken down. "I'm sad," I admitted, "but I'm also at peace. For the first time in years, I'm at peace." On the 29th day, one day before the deadline, a moving truck arrived. Matthew and 2 movers took everything out. Clothes, furniture, boxes, that grey sofa I hated so much. Victoria supervised everything with a look of contained fury. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even look at me. She got into the car bought with my money, and drove off without looking back. Matthew was the last to leave. Carrying a box of photographs, he stopped at the door. "Thank you for the $5,000. I will pay it back, along with the other $180,000. I don't know when, but I will do it." "Don't do it for me, Matthew. Do it for yourself, so you learn that debts are paid, that promises are kept." He nodded, and then in a small voice he asked, "Can I come visit you? Someday, when things are calmer." I really thought about it. "Call me in 6 months. If by then you have kept your word, if you have shown that you've changed, we can try to rebuild something. But it will be different, with limits, with respect." "I understand." He reached out as if to hug me. I tensed up. I wasn't ready. He noticed. He stopped. And he just kissed me on the forehead. "I love you, Mum. And I'm sorry. I really am." And he left. I closed the door behind him. I leaned against the wood. And finally, after months of holding back, of being strong, of being strategic, I allowed myself to cry. I didn't cry for Matthew, or for Victoria, or even for the lost money. I cried for the broken illusion of what could have been and never was, for that son I raised to be good and somehow got lost along the way, for the years I wouldn't recover. But I also cried with relief, because finally, my house was mine again. The following months were for healing. I started inviting my friends over again on Thursdays. Rose, Amy, Sarah. We drank coffee and ate donuts at my table, without having to ask permission, without feeling like we were in the way. Chloe and Brittany started coming on Sundays with the grandchildren. The house filled up again with children's laughter, the smell of chicken and mashed potatoes, those long talks that only happen in families who truly love each other. I adopted a cat, a stray orange cat that appeared one afternoon in my garden. I named him Robert because he had those same golden eyes as my husband and that tranquil way of observing the world. And little by little, I started remembering who I was before I became the invisible woman in my own life. 6 months later, Matthew called. "Mom, I already paid the 5,000. I deposited it today, and I have 300 saved up for the rest. I know there's a long way to go, but I'm working on it. How are you, son?" There was a pause. "I'm better. Victoria and I are in therapy. She's still angry with you, but at least she's working on understanding why she did what she did. And me too. I'm learning to set boundaries, to not be so afraid. I'm glad. Can I come visit you? Coffee? Half an hour?" I thought about it, and this time the answer was easier. "Yes, but just you. And at a coffee shop, not here. I'm not ready for you to enter this house yet." "I understand. I love you, Mum." "I love you too, son. But loving doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering and choosing every day to rebuild what was broken." 1 year after that family meeting that changed everything, I am sitting in my garden. The afternoon sun warms my face. Robert the cat sleeps in my lap. My plants are blooming because I finally have time to take care of them. Not everything is perfect. I still have difficult days, days where I miss the idea of what could have been, days where I wonder if I was too hard. But then I remember the padlock, the humiliations, the nights where I felt like a foreigner in my own bed. And I know I did the right thing, because I recovered something more valuable than a house. I recovered my dignity, my peace, my right to live without fear, without guilt, without having to justify my existence. Matthew comes to visit me once a month. We have coffee, we talk. We've had 4 visits now, and each one is a little less awkward than the last. I don't know if we will ever have the relationship we had. Probably not. But we are building something new, something based on mutual respect, on clear boundaries, on love that is no longer blind but conscious. And that is enough. Because I learned something I should have learned a long time ago. True wealth is not in what you own, but in what you don't allow to be taken from you. Your peace, your dignity, your right to live without apologizing for existing. And that no one will ever take from me again. I share this story not for you to judge me, nor for you to applaud me. I share it because I know there are many women out there living the same thing, feeling invisible in their own homes, putting up with it because they think it's what they have to do. And I want you to know this. You don't have to put up with it. You don't have to be martyrs. You can set boundaries. You can say no. You can take back your lives. It is never too late to defend yourself. It is never too late to choose yourself. I did it at 67 years old, and if I could do it, you can too. Don't let anyone make you feel less. Not your son, not your daughter-in-law, not anyone. You are enough. You always have been, and you deserve respect, especially in your own house, especially in your own life. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think, if it gave you the strength to do what you need to do, leave me a comment. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me if you are fighting your own battle too. You are not alone. None of us are. Like this video, if this story reminded you of your own worth. Subscribe to keep hearing stories of women who decided to stop being invisible. Because our voices matter, our stories matter. And as long as there is someone willing to tell them, there will be hope for all the others. With love and respect, Eleanor. The end.